Welcome back to Digital Necessity Answered. Joining us today is Bill Cunningham. Bill, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Bill Cunningham. I'm a part of the banking and financial services practice here at Endava. I've been working in banking and technology for about the last quarter century or so, 25 years. Started my career even a few years before that. I like to say that the internet and I started our careers at about the same time. I've always worked in network application development my whole life, my whole
Well,
working life.
well, that is a brilliant journey that you have been on. So much has changed since the internet burst into our lives, and banking has had significant changes as well. So, how do you see the digital banking and some of the innovations we've seen in the past, say, 5 years?
hmm I mean, I think in the last 5 years, one of the things that we've seen a lot more focus on is moving towards some of the back end systems, which I think when you saw the first wave of transformation in consumer banking, but also in things like wealth management and investment banking, there was a big focus on being able to provide a multi-channel experience. How do I bring together my my web experience with my face-to-face experience with my ever-changing smart device, whether it's a tablet or a mobile phone, etc. And a lot of that was done, I think, initially by, building these middleware layers, APIs, ETL layers for data, et cetera. And now what you're seeing is the impact of that the big legacy systems have almost gotten bigger and more difficult to maintain because of all the things that have happened on the front end. So now you're seeing a more aggressive move into re-architecting the core banking systems, moving things onto the cloud, getting smarter about the sort of the data science. How do we actually manage these gobs and gobs of data. I say gobs now because I've lost track of my Greek. Terabyte used to sound big, and now it's like you fit it on a chip. Um, but I think that's a big thing that you've seen sort of across the industry. I think consumer banking is still trying to figure out how to deal with that because there, I think more than anywhere else, if you look at more of the sort of mid-tier regional banks, that are not the big global multinationals, they've invested so much in their core banking systems that they're tend to be the CTOs, CIOs tend to still be reluctant to embark on real transformation on the back end because it almost literally means ripping everything apart and starting over. But even then, you're starting to hear that they realize if they don't do that and do it soon, they may fall victim to to the fintech threat that they all know is out there.
And I guess the recent impact of the pandemic, we're seeing a further impetus driving that because there's no humans to catch at the back end the same way there is with the traditional banking model.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think I'm actually just recovering from the illness myself, so I know it's not a fun thing to deal with. But I think that there are long-term impact you're going to see from this forced quarantining, and banking is a perfect example, right? You can't stop banking, so what flaws there are, whether it's customer acquisition. Or simple transactions. I mean, there are still some pretty basic banking transactions that require paper or a person at some point in the chain that really shouldn't probably. And I think most people can do almost, let's say, 90% of their day-to-day banking without having to interact with a human. But as soon as you hit a workflow that requires paper or a human, you're really seeing that the impact of that even more now that we're all sitting in our homes trying to do everything through our computer screens.
Oh no. So obviously the big challenges of the legacy, the trying to, as you say, rewrite it all into being cloud native,
Yeah.
presents some of the huge challenges, but it does present some brilliant opportunities as well. So have you seen any recent really good examples of some innovative approaches in modernizing the back ends?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think in modernizing the backends, I was going to go a slightly different direction, but I was thinking about the open banking platforms, which
Hmm.
which sort of happened in Europe out of necessity because of the GDPR2 uh, regulations, but are being picked up more and more in the US. And for me, what I find most interesting about that is, you know, once a bank sort of gets over the idea that they're effectively sharing data for free, right? Not without the customer's consent, but effectively they're sharing data for free. It suddenly opens up this whole world of possibility for how new and innovative products can interact with their customers and get the information and only the information they need from the bank. And I'll tell you one of my favorite examples of that, which is nothing to do with money. I was actually I heard of this from somebody, one of the Canadian banks, but Canada was pretty quick to do this at a national level. That there's certain information that your banks have on you that as long as you give consent, they can share through APIs, etc. And one example this guy gave me was going to a bar if you're young and having to prove your identity, right? So it used to be you just give somebody your driving license, which means you're handing a stranger something that has your photograph, your physical address where you live, your age, your weight, your height, your eye color, etc. In Canada now, if you just the bouncer has a device and he just says, let me check. And all the device does is it pings your bank account and says, is this person above or below 21 years of age? And that's the only thing it replies back. So to get into the bar, you just have to say, oh yeah, here, ding. Oh yeah, okay, go right ahead, and you not share any more information. So I like that because I think that there's sort of a natural fear that people have about too much data being stored on them in too many places and it being accessible to too many others. But I think that's a great example where what you're actually doing is narrowing down a use case so that you're only sharing the data that's relevant and not, sort of oversharing data that, you don't have to. It's not exactly an answer to your question. It's just a bit. It just popped into my head as a piece of sort of innovative use of that technology that I like.
No, I think that is a very, very clever and very pertinent example. So obviously, with GDPR being in Europe, you're right. It's the standards tend to go global quite quickly, and people are very nervous about sharing their data to too many organisations. So when it comes to data and banking, that it's obviously highly sensitive, highly confidential information. Are you seeing any trends developing in that space to further enhance security and that data custodianship?
I think yes. I think that you know, first of all, data security is probably first and foremost on anybody's mind. You go into talk to C-suite people in any bank, large or small, and ask them where their priorities are. Data security and data protection is number one always. People talk a lot about cloud first strategies. I think security first strategy is probably even more prevalent and relevant. What we saw, starting a few years back as the financial sector was, moving towards cloud computing, was a general distrust of public cloud, right? So, your big names, AWS, Azure, Google, it was almost as though the bigger the institution, the less they trusted putting any sensitive data into the public cloud. I think that's changed quite a bit in the last couple of years. I think that there's now there's now more trust in, whether it's simple, well, not simple, but whether it's, encryption technology, or, there's more trust that the services being provided are secure, and that, you can do a lot and protect the data that you're putting out there. So you still have these sort of hybrid public privates where there's certain information that simply doesn't go anywhere. And sometimes that's because regulators insist that it has to be, even though you're talking about bits and bytes, they have to exist on hardware that is physically, inside the country where the customer or corporation that you're servicing is physically registered as well. So there are a lot of minutia there, but I think the biggest trend that we've seen is a trust that the technology has caught up and that you can do that level of security even if you're sitting on an AWS inside the AWS cloud, for example.
Excellent. Well, has been an absolute delight talking with you today, Bill. Thank you for joining us and answering another digital necessity.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.